Dude, I just noticed this. You're kind of like the white Kaepernick.
I'm not quite as bodied up as him, but that's my goal now.
It's interesting that hip-hop has always been socially and politically embedded. Tons of people in America literally hate black people.
Alright, welcome to Owls at Dawn. We are just two dudes from Southern California. Studied philosophy.
Three dudes.
Well, today it's three dudes. And actually, well, we're not all from Southern California, but Troy and I are from Southern California, and Michael was sequestered there for a few years while studying at an evangelical college. But we have all studied philosophy, politics, and religion around the world. Two of them now teach philosophy around the world, I guess. Anyway, we bullshit with impunity on this podcast, and today we got a guest, so we're gonna run it. Things are relatively back to normal. And by normal, I mean that I am half naked. Troy is and I are not in the same room, and we have a guest, Michael, from This Week in Hip Hop, who is back in his residence, his place of residence in England, who's joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor, at this point at least.
That's right. We'll see what you feel like in an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's try to make that dishonorable by the end of this.
I'm counting on it.
So yeah, so let's get this shit started, huh?
All right, so our first segment is the Shitty Minutes, where one of us rants about what's really grinding our gears this week. Austin, what do you got for us?
So the thing that's really pissing me off this week has to do with some current events that have been going on, but less about the current events and more about how people react to the current events. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about this later in the episode with regards to Colin Kaepernick and all of that controversy and shit. But really what pisses me off is the lack of patience that people have for young human people trying to figure shit out in a really complex world with complex situations. So lately, the thing that I've been seeing a lot on social media and that I've read a couple of articles about is that now Colin Kaepernick, who's taking a knee with one of his teammates and who has pledged $1 million to Urban Community, that he's now backtracking on his original statement. Motherfuckers, he's not backtracking. He's just growing. He's learning. He got together with a group of dudes and they're trying to figure out how can we still serve urban communities, still stand for the cause, which is Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of shit going on. There's a lot of social tension. And I'm a young fucking millionaire who's also dealing with trying to keep a job and I'm playing poorly. I don't exactly know how to handle monetary fiscal responsibility. I'm trying to figure out how to engage in the world politically and socially. Fuck, man. Let's have some goddamn patience and just stop being so fucking quick to judge these people and say, oh, he's backtracking. He's backtracking now. Jesus Christ, man. If you judged me for all of the shit that I've done in my life, some people do, and if you do, fuck you, but I have done some shit in my life, man. I'm not exactly this fucking stellar creature, man. I fuck up, I make mistakes, and I'm learning and I'm growing. Just be a little patient with motherfuckers. Shit. Shitty minute over.
Dude, I just noticed this, but you're kind of like the white Kaepernick.
Oh, Jesus. How so?
You kind of look like him, right? And you got the tats and the whole thing.
That's a good point.
Are you living vicariously through him?
I'm not quite as bodied up as him, but that's my goal now. I'm going to get a poster up on my wall, the Kaepernick poster. And he's got that brilliant fro. And when I do grow my hair out, I got that curly shit. So yeah.
You guys see that headline? That is, I didn't read it, but something about he's got like a Muslim girlfriend who's a communist or something, and that's how he became woke.
Yeah, I saw the headline. I didn't read it, though, because it sounded so ridiculous. Although good for him if he does have, like, a cool Muslim communist girlfriend. You know, wouldn't we all be better if we had one? So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I told Troy this week, I met a couple of women from Saudi Arabia this week, and I told him, I said, I don't exactly know what I said. I probably said something relatively crass, like, I've got Muslim fever or something. But, yeah, but genuinely speaking, this one woman was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Dark hair, dark skin, blue eyes.
I just want to note that Austin called a woman an object, and I object. But go ahead.
Oh, I did say thing, didn't I? Well, I mean, globally speaking, like the most beautiful creature, being, human, thing, beautiful smile, and blue eyes, man, in these just radiant blue. I was like, God damn, man, you are no wonder like the Arabian princes and shit like that were writing all those erotic love poems. Fucking hot, man.
How did blue eyes get into someone from Saudi Arabia? Like, they have some like some Swedes go over there?
The Swedes? You mean like white people?
Yeah, didn't Blue Eyes originate in Scandinavia?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe that's it. I don't know. All I know is they were out here causing trouble. I'm not going to out them, so no one will ever find out who they were. But
yeah.
let's just say that lots of Saudi Arabians, they come to Orange County for the summer, and they do bad things. Well, at least compared to their culture, they do bad things.
No
And
idea
they were
what you're
asking
talking
me.
Oh, just like going out and like partying and stuff like that?
Oh, they party stuff. They actually asked me because it was in Newport Beach where I ran into them, and they were like, "Well, where can we go to get into a little bit of trouble?" And I was like, "Trouble?" I was like, "What kind of trouble?" And they were like, "Well, we don't drink, but some good trouble." And I was like, "Okay, well, I can recommend some places if you want."
Should have been like, trouble. Yeah, you guys ever smuggled a body before? Follow me.
Yeah, right.
Sorry to bring the tone down, guys. I apologize.
No, that's standard.
All right, so our next segment, our main segment for this week, with the two regular guys and our guest Mike Burns, we're going to be talking about hip-hop, culture, history, relevance, wherever the conversation goes. So guys, what's on your mind this week?
Well, yeah. I guess first thing is, Michael, do you want to give a little intro about yourself and what you're doing and why you like hip-hop music? When did you find hip-hop music? What is hip-hop music?
Oh my God, big questions. Well, my name is Michael. I'm a 31-year-old white man that lives in England, to get that out of the way, and grew up between the Midwest and the South. But yeah, I've been really into hip-hop music since the age of like 5 or 6. I don't know why, but I've liked it a lot for a really long time. And yeah, I'm kind of interested not only in the history of rap and all that sort of stuff, but I'm still into contemporary hip hop music. I don't like to be a old white gatekeeper type about things, but yeah, I'm into rap. I care about rap a lot. I don't proclaim to be any sort of expert, but it's something that I love a whole lot.
How did you listen to hip-hop when you were 5 years?
Terrible parents. No, one of the first things was I remember when I was really young in school. This was when I was in like first grade or something. If I did something good in school, my mom would let me buy a cassette tape at Kmart. And I remember some of the first cassette tapes I bought. I did get Nirvana's Nevermind on cassette tape. And then I got Bobby Brown. I got, this is kind of embarrassing, but MC Hammer.
Oh, yeah.
And then a year later, I had this babysitter that lived behind us. His name was Josh. And Josh would come over, and I was maybe 6, maybe 7 at this point, and would like bring CDs over. And I remember he brought Dre and Snoop Dogg, The Chronic, like the original one. So I like got really into that. Although I think he got fired when I quoted lyrics from it at my parents. And then had another friend that had this weird stoner cousin who at the time seemed like an adult, but I think she was like a 15-year-old girl, who made me a tape of Wu-Tang's Enter the 36 Chambers. So while my age was still in the single digits, I got into that. And then I had wild, irresponsible parents that put cable on the TV in my room. So when I was young, like you could watch, like they still had Yo MTV Raps that was on all the time. And like, MTV played music videos. And then when I got a little older, there was a BET Rap City that was on every day, like when school was over. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, that's up through like, early teens. But all of those factors helped.
Yeah. It made me think when you said that MC Hammer was your sort of foray into it. That sort of reminds me like when people start drinking, they start drinking Zima in wine coolers and shit. and then you graduate to beer, right? Is that kind of how it was? I guess
so, yeah. But it's like, as corny as Hammer was, whatever. Like, you get the basics there. You get a sense of, like, what it's like when someone is rapping. You see some of the dancing in the videos. You hear the music. And you realize there's something there you like a lot. And then you hear the better version of that, or, like, a real version, and you're like, oh, shit. Like, when you jump from listening to the production on an MC Hammer album to listening to Dr. Dre production or something like that. And then you go on and listen to some De La or Tribe or Nas or Wu-Tang or whatever it is. And it's just this world of sounds that get opened up.
So if you were to look through the vault of history of hip-hop, if you were to say, here are 3 artists, give one contemporary artist, one sort of mid-artist, and then one sort of old-school artist or group, of course, who would you recommend that, like, who are in your Mount Rushmore?
So Interesting question. Part of me thinks that if we're going to do, I'm going to do a little contrarian here. Part of me thinks since Mount Rushmore itself is just like the OGs of the American experiment, that maybe if we did a Mount Rushmore of hip hop, it should just be originators, but I'll bracket that. And if we're going to do 3, first one's really boring because I think everyone would think this. But I definitely think right now Kendrick. I think Kendrick is really special. And I think out of the artists we have currently making music, I mean, there's some really good people. And there's a good chance that, and I said the word chance before I said actual chance, but there's a good chance that Chance, the rapper, is also going to turn out to be a very special artist. But I'm not sure about that. I'm sure about Kendrick. And I'm sure that people are going to look back on Kendrick the way that we thought about, you know, Pac and Biggie and Jay and a whole other host of people. And I think, like, everyone Kendrick's working with right now as well that's on Top Dog Entertainment. It's just the most interesting group of people making like mainstream rap music. So I'd say Kendrick right now. If we're going to go back a little bit, can I do groups too?
Yeah.
Obviously the mid-90s is hard because that's when so much good stuff happened. But for me, it's still A Tribe Called Quest because they're that group that bridged the kind of funky, Afrocentric, late 80s New York sound into something that was more contemporary. And then Tribe was one of those first groups that, you know, you had a period where there was kind of corny mainstream rap, and then there was harder East Coast rap, things like Wu-Tang. And Tribe appealed to everyone, and there's all these stories. Obviously, I wasn't at any of these, but, you know, at Tribe shows in the early 90s, you would have, like, long-haired white college kids, and then you would have, like, you know, Wu-Tang fans and like, big dudes from all sorts of areas and stuff. So I think Tribe's interesting in that sense, and they changed the way we think about production in terms of the reliance on jazz samples. They introduced the production of Jay Dilla to a lot of the world on their last 2 albums. They were just the most complete group, I think, in hip-hop history. And interestingly enough, it just came out that they have like a secret record that might get released that they recorded before Phife Dawg died. Who knows if this will really happen, but this came out. And then if we're going to go, and you want one kind of like foundational type thing.
Yeah, just another,
right?
I guess. Who else would be up there? I mean, it doesn't have to be like
Yeah.
straight up like late 70s or something.
No. We'll say then someone who's primarily an 80s, 90s dude, but Rakim. Because Rakim changed the way that people rapped.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't he generally considered like the smoothest lyricist or one of the best lyricists of all time?
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, in rap music, there's always been this constant progression of MCing. You know, like early on, it was just very simple rhymes that would like end on the rhyme. So, you know, I had a cat, my mom was fat, whatever it might be. And Rakim comes out and is sort of rhyming internally and doing multi-syllabic rhyming, and does something no one else is doing. And the crazy thing is, like, Rakim still is a better MC than a majority of people that have rapped since him. So it's not like a thing where we don't look back the same way you could look back like in basketball and be like, you know, Jerry West, one of the greats. But if Jerry West played, you know, you transport him against LeBron James circa now, it's not going to be a game. You guys could disagree with me on that, but I'd say maybe that'd be the case. Whereas if you, like Rakim right now, you know, a guy that's from the first generation still raps better than most young people that are rapping.
Yeah, that's a great point in terms of if you listen to a lot of golden age hip hop, like you can still love that stuff, but the rhyme schemes they feel dated. But Rakim, you listen to him, it doesn't feel dated at all. It sounds contemporary in terms of the complexity of the rhyme schemes.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think like someone like Black Thought or The Roots is similar in that his flow is very not derivative, but influenced by Rakim and Black Thought. Now, I don't know how old he is, but it has to be getting towards 50. But the same thing, like you listen to Roots, like a Roots record from '94, and you listen to Black Thought rapping now, and it's technically just as good and just as skilled. It hasn't aged at all. And I think he's someone that kind of has that similar trajectory to someone like Rakim that's just not going to get bad.
Right on. So I guess, I mean, Troy, you can kind of jump in here too and see if this is a part of the conversation or I guess the direction of the conversation that you'd be interested in going. But I'm really interested because I really didn't find hip hop until later years. I had some buddies in high school that listened to it, but it was like DMX and a little bit of Noriega, but it was DMX and Snoop, of course, being from Southern California, and and a little bit of Dre, and so it wasn't really my thing. But I guess go ahead.
Well, can I ask you guys a Southern California question?
Yeah.
You can edit this out if this is boring, but I found this. I went to college in Southern California, And the trippiest thing for me was every kid I went to college with that was from Southern California, like Orange County, San Diego, Los Angeles area, almost none of them listened to rap music. And their frames of reference were like punk, emo, hardcore.
For me.
Music that's totally fine. But I remember the only other people I knew that were into rap music there was like a dude from Detroit and a dude from Minnesota. And like some guys and a guy from Portland, I think. But it's just weird because growing up in Florida, I would say like rap music was the main music at school dances that people listened to at parties that people talked about. So would you guys say like growing up in Southern California, in the late 90s, early 2000s, was it just not as much of a thing?
Troy, what do you think?
You guys talking about mostly growing up in, the OC and down south. I grew up north of all that, up in the valley, San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
So for us, Tupac was everywhere in the 90s. And Dre, the Chronic. I didn't even like hip-hop all that much growing up, but I knew every song on the Chronic just from hearing it. So even if that was just part of culture up here.
Yeah. Do you think it might be more of like a coastal California, Orange County elite type thing?
I don't know. I'm surprised. I kind of thought the OC was full of. Back in the '90s, we call them wiggers, right? Is that a culturally appropriate term?
Yeah, but we used to deride the wiggers though. They didn't really, they were kind of outliers. Like I remember a couple dudes in high school and whatnot that were straight up that we used to make fun of for thinking they were black and listening to rap music, right? Because we were white, and white people listened to punk and Sublime and
yeah, exactly, Sublime and Nirvana. That was it.
Yeah, some guys tried to beat me up at summer camp one year for like the wigger thing. It was fucked up.
Yeah, you know what? Today it's so funny. So I've been in the UK off and on for like the past 6 years, and whenever I come back, I always get a quick reminder at the music sensibilities in Orange County, and I put on the radio station without fail. Green Day, Sugar Ray, Sublime. Incubus, like that is just what is going on if you listen to the popular radio stations out here.
Yuppie rock, man.
It is yuppie rock. It is. Well, it's hard to make good music when the sun is shining all the time and you have good Mexican food and life is good. And
that's why no poets and philosophers come from Southern California, man.
I know. Well, that's why. So we got an email the other day from someone who's been listening to the show, and she is someone from Southern California, from Orange County, and she, in her response, she had some very kind words. So shout out to Hillary. Thanks for reaching out.
Thanks, Hillary.
She was like, I can't believe that this kind of stuff is coming out of Orange County. She's like, what the hell? was kind of her response. And I know I basically had to say, yeah, but Troy and I did live elsewhere in the world, so I'm sure that had some sort of help in affecting our global perspective, if you will. But well, okay. So one of the things I wonder is since we tend to talk more about politics, culture, critical theory, and stuff like that, I kind of wonder what is the role of hip hop in the broader political and cultural landscape. I know there are a lot of people that do work on hip-hop theory or hip-hop and politics and stuff like that. I know you've spoken on that before, haven't you, Michael, at conferences and shit?
A little bit. And I don't know how much you want to go into that stuff. But yeah, I did a little bit of work on Frantz Fanon and the relation between Fanon. I've talked about Kendrick in particular, actually. So looking at kind of like the affirmation of blackness, which for Fanon is sort of a political move, and looking at the way in which, in Kendrick at least, the last record, To Pimp a Butterfly, is full of like just affirmation of blackness and of that culture. And then you kind of see the same thing in like the music of someone like the LA dude Kamasi Washington, jazz guy, that put out a really cool, I think, triple album, The Epic. But it's a sort of like really aggressive affirmation of blackness that I think has been present in some of that music recently, which I do think is politically important. And I do think, and I've had like disagreements with people about this, but I think there was something interesting that in some of the protest happening in the last year in places like Baltimore and Cleveland and Oakland, that Kendrick's All Right became like a rallying cry and something that was chanted at those marches. So I think like one can kind of disagree with the theoretical apparatus behind someone like Kendrick Lamar's lyrics, but people have found something in that and have used it. They've literally used those words politically, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, it always strikes me that, I'm not a hip hop head, certainly, but just looking at the cultural musical landscape, it definitely feels like the last 5 or 6 years, hip hop is the most important genre of music in American culture in terms of social impact. You could not imagine a rock group having a song chanted at a political rally or protest. It just would never happen. I can't imagine. Like maybe Bob Dylan would have been in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
But only Kendrick could have occupied that space and had that authority amongst the populace. Like that's so interesting that this is now a possible thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird to think about, too, that a lot of forms of music, I mean, I think, and I like, just to be clear, lots of rock music and R&B music and all types of stuff, but there's a lot of music that's kind of personal, you know, like when you listen to the lyrics, it's dealing with interpersonal relationships or one individual's perspective. It's interesting that, like, hip-hop as a style of music has always been socially and politically embedded. Like, it's an art form that's always been made against the backdrop of certain sort of socio-political situations. And there's this documentary that I think it came out on Netflix called Rubble Kings. It's maybe a year or two old, and it literally charts how hip-hop in New York emerged directly out of kind of the violence, and in particular some of the violence attributed to like some of the gangs in New York in the 70s. So you see that like it's a music itself that didn't just emerge from people hanging out by themselves, but it emerged in a social context, in a political context, and was sort of responding to inequality, to oppression, to police violence, to drug addiction, like from the get-go.
So, because I think so many people, at least in my experience, they think of hip-hop music as just talking about like banging hoes and hanging with your boys and like shooting people and stuff like that. So there's this weird stereotype. So why do you think that? I mean, besides the fact that there's just like a blatant racism sort of embedded within that, why do you think that there is such a negative stereotype that refuses to accept the importance of the cultural critique or the political engagement of hip hop music?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's like two ways you can think about that, right? In one sense, when you think about, you know, what got called gangster rap, I mean, it was people telling stories. And I think there's, you know, often critiques of the glorification of violence and selling drugs, whatever it might be. But a lot of that stuff, like, it's like at the beginning of Juicy, Biggie says, I might get it wrong, but something like, you know, shout out to all the neighbors that called the police on me when I was just on the corner trying to sell some rocks to feed my daughter. And you get this little sort of window into that world right there where Biggie is saying, like, people in this situation are not selling drugs because it's cool to sell drugs. They're selling drugs because they've been socioeconomically, like they've been excluded from these structures. And it's the means by which they can participate economically. And then the other side of it is like when you think about the, you know, songs about popping bottles and being in the club or whatever it might be, which often people call it the shiny suit era that
right.
Puff Daddy kind of inaugurated. Well, it's like, what does America tell you other than success is material accumulation and like the possession of women as objects and the overindulgence of substances? So it's like, fuck yeah, we've come from some really bad situations and have some money and are going to celebrate. So
right.
it's one of those weird things where sort of American capitalism says consume, 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 celebrate, consume, and it's cool except for when like black guys do it. and then it's like threatening or something like that, you know. And I've always thought like the Johnny Cash, like I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die, and white people love that, like, but it's literally someone saying I murdered a human being just because I fucking wanted to see him die. Like that's sociopathic shit.
But he said it. But he said it in a really nice way, and he had a country accent.
Yeah. But like, if in a rap song someone talks about violence in the context of something that like happened because of a shitty situation reflective of urban America, especially, you know, post the crack era and Reaganomics, that, you know, is somehow horribly offensive.
And it should also be pointed out that, you know, there's a huge difference here between the different styles and, you know, geographical locations from especially 90s hip-hop. So you have the G-Funk in the West Coast, and you have that party funk stuff going on, and the videos have, like, you know, the stereotypical champagne and hoes and, you know, cash money. But then you listen to, like, Mobb Deep, right? And that stuff is just dark. I mean, even the beats are just dark. And when they're depicting lifestyle in New York, you know, Wu-Tang's, you know, a little bit more whimsical than that, but still it's this, like, these dark beats. And that's telling you stories about what's actually happening on the street. Yeah. And you don't hear people talking about that like it's glorification, right? Because it's very clearly not.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's weird. It's like It's not. It's just storytelling. And like you're absolutely right. You listen to even the whole G-Funk sound. Like, what does it sound like? A sunny, hot day in Southern California, because that's what it's like there. And like you listen to Mobb Deep, and it's like, yeah, a cold, dark night in a bad area of Queens. Like, that's what it sounds like. It sounds gritty and spooky and real, because that's what those people were literally living. You know, and I think it's like you said. Like, I mean, you might listen to a lot of independent rock music, and it sounds like, you know, the meanderings of an intelligent guy in a dorm at Wesleyan College or something like that. And that's fine, but like, dude has had the privilege to be in that position. No, Sufjan went to like a Christian college in Michigan.
Oh, okay.
But Wesleyan, this is going to kill me now, but a couple of those like famous indie rock bands from the 90s were Wesleyan students.
Oh, were they?
Yeah. Shit.
It's the
Whatever,
pressure of being perfect than the Methodist tradition, right?
Yeah, or like,
Drives
you know,
you.
like you have like what was it, like Vampire Weekend? The dudes are all like Columbia University students, you know, and they're fucking dope. But their music sounds like, you know, kind of well off, very intelligent Columbia University students.
It sounds like the lawn outside, like at the courtyard outside of, you know, Ivy League University, exactly.
Yeah.
With their cardigans.
Which, once again, yeah, and that's totally cool. I like their music. It's fun to hear about that world. I envy that world like I envy a lot of things. But but for whatever reason, you know, when people, there's just been that thing about rap music that there's something wrong in an honest depiction of what urban America is like.
I mean, isn't the idea, it just feels to me like white people are allowed to be ironic in the sense of occupying a different personality in the music as opposed to their actual personality, whereas the assumption is that a black person can only speak from their own voice and not sort of depict or represent their entire, you know, city or their community or whatever, because that's a level of sort of poetic license that is only afforded to people we already give that authority to.
I get what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so basically that, like, if there's a rap song where someone references, let's say, murder, they can only do it if they really killed someone. It can never be a something that's done poetically or kind of in like a literary sense, right? Is that getting that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like, we could all write songs about murder, no one will care.
Yeah, well, so what do you think it is? Is it that there's some sort of, I mean, I guess it's like a cultural legitimacy or some sort of cultural capital that certain groups of individuals just have and other groups don't have? Is that why there's no poetic license?
Is it okay to reference the Kaepernick thing?
Oh yeah,
right now. Let's do it.
Because this, like, here, okay, it makes me think of that. Because like, I'm gonna be a little bit aggressive, but you guys have this, you have like, you know, you've set a tone on this podcast, and I'm just gonna follow it. But like, with everything that's happened this week with Kaepernick, I have no other conclusion than tons of people in America literally hate black people, and in particular, are terrified about black men, and like have just a visceral racist response to the affirmation or sort of political activity of a black person. And I think that I mean, and maybe that's too easy of an answer, but then sometimes it's like, well, why would a black artist have a hard time, or why would they have the government try to ban their music or something like that? Like, I think it's kind of that. I don't know. You guys are probably more nuanced about this, but that's what this Kaepernick thing has left me feeling.
No, dude. I mean, well, look at what happened with Lena Dunham and Odell Beckham yesterday and all that shit that came out. I know well, fuck it. I guess we were going to bullshit about it, but Troy doesn't know about this. So this was going to be our bullshitting segment, but now we're going to go on the fly here. We're going to have to come up with something else for bullshitting because we just got to get into it. Michael, do you want to explain what happened with Lena Dunham and Odell Beckham? Because you were balls deep into it yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, and sorry to anyone listening if I get this a little bit wrong. I'm not trying to mischaracterize. I'm doing my best. Lay the fuck off. So there was what was it? The Met Gala happened recently. Lena Dunham went. Amy Schumer went. They wrote like a letter. It was like a back and forth interview between Schumer and Dunham. And it was published via, like, Lena Dunham has like a website or a newsletter. And in it, Lena Dunham referenced two things. One was she got sat next to Odell Beckham Jr. at this event and basically said, he didn't seem interested in talking to me, and he looked at me once and thought to himself, I wouldn't fuck that. So because he didn't want to fuck me, because I was a fat white girl or whatever,
in a tuxedo.
He ignored me the whole night. Yeah, because she was wearing a tuxedo. So of course the implicit thing is like he never talked to her. They never had any interaction, but she just performed this like psychological analysis, which was like, well, another black guy doesn't want to fuck me, so won't talk to me. And then she referenced later in the letter trying to grind on the actor Michael B. Jordan. Her discussion of black men in this are, one of them is the scary black man that can only make the white woman a sex object. Then the other way she talks about a black man is as a sex object she wants to grind on in Michael B. Jordan. So that came out, and the internet, for the most part, was not pleased.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
It's real. But there was someone tweeted something to the effect of, maybe Odell Beckham had just watched Girls, so figured Lena Dunham didn't know how to talk to black people. Or something like that.
You know what?
Which I thought was pretty good.
And you know oh, dude, it's so good. And you know what the best is, that her account, like, I looked on her, she only has like 200 followers or something like that. And this tweet that she put out got retweeted thousands of times. And then she retweeted after that. She's like, I've never had a famous tweet before. Does this mean I don't have to go to work now?
God bless you, sweetheart.
No, that was a good one. But yeah, I mean, it's so amazing. So kind of going back to the sort of embedded stereotypes, there was a Twitter follower that I think you even liked one of my tweets that I tweeted from. I think it was a female. I'm not sure, but Bassey, I think it was Bassey is the Twitter handle. I'm not sure who it is actually, so it could be a dude. I'm not sure, but basically, the user said something to the effect of, I mean, when you stereotype a black man like this has serious historical repercussions. How many black men have been killed because, well, I think he has a gun, he must have a gun, I'm gonna shoot him?
Well, it's Emmett Till. Like, Emmett Till was brutally murdered because some white guys thought he was gonna try to have sex with their women. Was brutally, and there's a whole history of that, like in the South, and even like in the Midwest after the Great Migration, of black men being viewed as a threat to, you know, a white man's woman. And this is a historical problem. So I mean, you're right in that, sorry, Bassey or whatever your name is, Twitter user. But yeah, I think you're totally right. They nail that on the head. And Lena Dunham is just replicating that same shit, in which, like, the black male somehow becomes a sex predator in his very existence because he didn't want to talk to you.
I can't believe that you didn't hear about that, Troy.
Nah, man. Whenever I hear the words Lena and Dunham together, though, I pretty much just skip over it, so.
Well, do you guys know the LA rapper Open Mike Eagle?
Oh, of course. He's awesome.
Yeah, so he has this song, and it's from his last record, and the song's called I Went Outside, and there's a line that says, like, where he goes, I Googled what Lena Dunham said, and I shouldn't have. And, like, it's just like a joke in the thing, basically, because and since that's happened, there's been, like, 3 scenarios. And then whenever it happens, hundreds of people, like, tweet that lyric, and he'll retweet it and stuff like that. But it's just so true that, like, every 4 months there's, like, a Lena Dunham thing, and we never should Google it. We shouldn't know what it is. And Troy, you're a better person than us.
So she has a history of saying stupid shit, I guess, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I guess I maybe just because of ignorance or something like that, I haven't been paying attention to her. And I've never watched Girls. It's never caught me. The only time I even heard about Girls really was when the one dude ate the girl's ass, and then everyone got all on Twitter about how, like, ass eating is a thing or something.
I mean, it's pretty dope,
know.
But
so I know nothing about the show.
Yeah. Well, someone brought, and I guess recently too, like, she publicly said that sushi is cultural appropriation.
Okay.
Because there was the whole thing, I'm gonna get this wrong, but whatever college it is in the Northeast, one of the little Ivies, there was the whole thing where the students protested the dining hall because they were serving sushi, and they said that, like, it signified cultural appropriation, and Lena Dunham was like, yeah, sushi is cultural appropriation. No, she says goofy stuff, man, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that she said this, and it's unfortunate that, like, she gets to use the guise of, well, I do funny things, or I do comedy.
Right, so that's what I was going to say. A lot of people, because it was an interview that she did with Amy Schumer, right? So
it was like they did it, like, together, so it was like 2 friends talking about the Met Gala.
Right. So I think a lot of people think that you can get away with shit like that in humor. And yeah, you can get away with a lot of shit in comedy, but that wasn't funny. That wasn't funny. Because what she said was, something along the lines of, he looked at me and was like, well, I don't know, do I fuck it? Or what do I do with it? And then, because I was wearing a tuxedo, he just went back to his phone. And so it was so strange to me that, I mean, I don't find that funny anyway. And I find some pretty off-colored stuff funny, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's shit you joke about with your friend.
Yeah.
Like, you have a friend who's someone like that, you can joke about that, you know, or he just didn't want to fuck me, but
Well, yeah, it'd be like if Schumer and Dunham were like having a drink after the event and they had that talk. That's perfectly fine, and I guess they did because they wrote the shit down. But like, you just don't publish that.
So I really am interested though in delving deeper into the Kaepernick thing. Troy, what were your thoughts about everything that was going on with Kaepernick and the people's reaction to that?
I mean, it was just, I don't know, man. There's so many thoughts about it. I don't know much about Kaepernick. I don't really follow football or anything, so I don't know about his, I guess he used to be a really good player, and maybe he isn't so much anymore. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's gonna be backup this year, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, some people are saying he might even get cut because he's got a big salary, and they don't want to pay him a bunch of money for riding the bench. So
yeah, I guess it just speaks to the whole idea that an athlete who's being paid a lot of money to do a job that would be the envy of almost anybody, right? That by doing that, by being given that quote unquote privilege, he's not allowed to speak to anything above that. Mm-hmm. And I guess that kind of goes for all athletes, right? What did Michael Jordan said? He can't speak out politically back in the 90s because Republicans buy shoes too, or buy sneakers too.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what's expected, that you just don't, if you're an athlete, you don't talk about anything bigger than you. And Bill Russell back in the 60s, he was marching with MLK, and there was a lot of talk about he was with the Celtics, and in Boston you had a lot of obviously racial hate going on there, and he had a very contested relationship with the Boston Celtic fans in the 60s because of that. It's a long stream of whether or not black athletes are allowed to speak out on things that are more important than just how to pass a ball or whatever. And the second that Kaepernick does this, there's a lot of talk about respect for the military and what's the importance of the flag and shit like that. But most of the hate seems to me to be about the fact that he's the one doing this. That someone who's making whatever $10-11 million a year or something like that, that he has too much privilege to speak as if he's being persecuted. Which, I mean, has he ever said he's the one being persecuted?
No, he never said that.
He's never once said anything remotely like that.
No.
It's just there's such a inability to even listen to what he's saying from anybody else. It just...
Well, yeah, that's the thing that annoys the shit out of me, is that there's this quick rigidity that is so prone to just automatically judge and critique without actually listening to what was being said, without actually having any sort of thoughtful engagement with the situation. And what I always wonder is, okay, so where does that come from? That's what I want to know. If you are so quick, if you are so immediately geared towards judging and just grasping at straws, if it's, well, he's privileged, he should be giving money away, and then they find out, well, he actually did pledge to give $1 million, his first million of this year. Then they're like, well, it's not about that, it's about the respect for the military. And it's like, well, actually, no, he did meet with a couple of teammates now, and they're trying to figure, that's why they're taking a knee now. And so they want to take a knee because they want to respect the military and the people that are fighting, but at the same time, they want to be critical of this symbol that also stands for other things. Then people are like, no, it's not about, he's backtracking. There's always something. There's always something that people are that opponents of this are looking for in order to castigate this guy. And so what that seems to indicate to me is that there's this deep-seated, immediate opposition to this person and what he stands for that is deeper than all this peripheral shit. And they're going to use all this smokescreen to try to make their argument have legitimacy. But ultimately, when you actually start to unravel it, it shows that it's really illegitimate, and ultimately it boils down to maybe you're just a racist fuck.
Yeah.
It's such
it's weird.
No, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say, one of you were saying something before, and like it just makes me think of the way in which people almost have, like really patriotic people, almost have this like, and I don't want to make light of abuse, right? But there's the whole trope in like, oh, he hits me because he loves me, and how could I ever leave because he provides a nice home for me and takes care of my kids? Well, people act like you can't criticize America, like in that same way, like, oh, well, you make money, you can't criticize this country. Your freedoms are protected here. You can't criticize anyone. It's this weird, like, logic by which it makes me wild uncomfortable. The thing that's like, well, you make money, you can't criticize this country. You have a good life, you can't criticize what's going on here. Just so weird.
Yeah, and it's always about the individual, right? I mean, it's such an American thing that when someone wants to talk about social issues, the conversation automatically becomes, who's the person saying these things, and are they consistent in every area of their intellectual and personal life? And both sides do this, and I don't want to be like Jon Stewart, both sides are bad kind of bullshit, right? But when we find out that a pastor is actually embezzling funds or is actually homosexual, or a Republican senator comes out and does something hypocritical, like runs away with his mistress or whatever, then we always freak out and go, oh, you know what? Proof that they're hypocrites overall. And that, that similar thing goes with someone like Kaepernick, where, is he actually giving money to these communities that he cares so much about? Is he actually a hypocrite when you get down to it? You can't even have a discussion about social issues and what's actually best for communities and society at large without automatically going back to who's the one saying it and are they actually a saint?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, I could drown a baby while saying 2 + 2 = 4, and it doesn't make the logic wrong because I'm doing something horrendous. So it's just weird that when one makes a statement like that, like on social justice, and like Kaepernick in the interview he did after the game, I think it was like in San Diego a couple nights ago. I mean, he was backing everything up with numbers. Like he was there talking about like the number of people who have died because of the police, people that have not been prosecuted after this sort of stuff. Like the guy's saying things that are factually true. So it's silly the way he's being discredited. And there was the one guy, what's his name, Jason Whitlock, who writes for Fox. Yeah, he's terrible.
Troy loves Jason Whitlock.
Oh yeah. But Jason Whitlock asked a question afterwards where he was like, "Well, Colin, but don't you think you're not being clear enough about your goals and aims?" Like, he was basically saying to Colin Kaepernick, like, you don't get to complain unless you have like a detailed socioeconomic analysis and a detailed programmatic for fixing this. And bless him, Kaepernick didn't indulge that question too much. But like the expectation on him is just insane. It's like if you're going to criticize, A, give up your paycheck, B, tell us exactly what we need to do right now to fix everything. Which is insane.
Yeah, it's basically moved the goalposts so far that it's impossible to actually achieve any social justice because you have to become Gandhi to do that.
Well, and this goes back to what Michael was saying a minute ago about how there's this averse reaction to any sort of affirmation of blackness, right? In reference to Fanon and stuff like that. What does it mean? Like, what is the affirmation of blackness? And what is it that Colin Kaepernick is doing that is so terrifying?
I mean, like...
And that hip-hop music does, and that Kendrick does, and shit like that. Like, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, the line that gets used a lot, like, and this happens at the beginning of Black Skin, White Mask, where Fanon talks about, like, striving for a new humanism. And, of course, for him, that just very simply means that dialectic in which the human is associated with basically the white man. Anything other than that is less human. So the affirmation of blackness, in a sense, is the affirmation of a humanity, and even what Fanon calls a universal humanity. In this way, that's just a pure affirmation. And it seems, I mean, obviously, like the Kaepernick is doing that. It makes people uncomfortable. When Kendrick has done that, he got a lot of shit for, what was it, the BET Awards performance when he was dancing on the cop car, and that made people pretty uncomfortable. I mean, do you guys think this is maybe a weird way to take this? It seems weird to me that this is happening in football, because if we think about all the similar things that have been said by basketball players, who are also black men that make millions of dollars in the past 6 months, I feel, and maybe I missed something, but I feel like Carmelo writing that thing in the New York Post, and then who was it? Like LeBron, Wade, Paul, and someone else at the ESPYs making that statement about police violence. I feel like for whatever reason, in basketball, the players are like allowed to speak and be humans a little bit more. Well, where just the whole reaction seems to be in football, you can't talk.
And Troy can talk to this because he's a big basketball nut. But the difference was, do you remember Sharif Abdur-Rahim when he refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, Troy?
It was Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Oh, sorry. Oh, my bad. Oops.
Whoa. Be careful with those names, yo.
Oh shit! Now who's the asshole?
Problematic.
And there was a lot of interesting history there because his name was Chris Jackson, right? And he was he converted when he was in the NBA, I think, and he changed his name to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did the same thing, right? He was Lew Alcindor, became Kareem later on, and so there's a history of Nation of Islam stuff and guys converting to Islam somewhere in their basketball career. And then he refused to, I think he even refused to come out of the locker room for the national anthem and all that. And yeah, there was a huge outcry about that, but of course we didn't have social media, so it kind of died away. And he was a good player, he was a really good player for a couple of years, but then he kind of fell by the wayside after that, and it all kind of went away. And I don't think anyone's done something like that since. So there's a little bit of history there as far as refusing the national anthem. Now, of course, that was before 9/11. So if someone did that now and their name was Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, there'd be, I think, a much bigger outcry.
Well, but he got chastised, remember? I mean, a lot of people were basically like, well, that's the end of his career. No team is going to want to hire him. Fans are going to boo him every single time that he comes out. So it kind of had a similar... I mean, he wasn't as prominent a figure as Colin Kaepernick, I think. But because Colin Kaepernick was literally like the godsend for football in a lot of ways. You know, he's on the cover of all these magazines and shit like that. So for him, it's an extremely high-profile event. But I think the difference is what you were talking about with what you were talking about, Michael, is that there's something about the flag as a symbol in patriotism and the national anthem that has a deeper hook. And I'm always reminded of these series of essays that Sartre wrote after he came back from America in the 40s during World War II. He came back to France after visiting America, and he wrote this essay about the difference between French freedom and American freedom. And for him, he said, French people, he's writing to French people in, I think it was in Le Monde, it was Le Temps Moderne. He wrote a Le Temps Moderne article. And he basically said, listen, Parisians, you guys don't understand American freedom, because for America, freedom is conformity. Freedom is not freedom from, and that's where the bedrock of the difference is between these two conceptions of freedom. He said in Paris, we're always thinking about freedom from. It's a negative freedom. We're free from the state. We're free from religion. Mm-hmm. And he said, so we think of freedom in that way. He said, but for Americans, you're free for patriotism. You're free for the flag. You're free for the ideals of Americanism. And he said, and that's really different. It's really hard for us to understand. And I think that there's actually something really powerful in that. It is this idea that in order to be a genuine patriotic American, you have to embrace the sort of American structures that are calling you towards it at all times, and you have to put yourself into that. And so you are free for all of the ideals that American structure stands for, which the flag then is the ultimate symbol that represents all those things.
Yeah, and there's something really ironic, right, about the fact that the same people who are saying, you know, you have to unquestionably stand up for the anthem and do all this kind of have this respectful stance towards it, the same people who are usually saying that, you know, they want to make America great again because apparently it's not right now. So they can criticize America, but only from a very particular perspective.
Yeah, especially when like the Make America Great Again thing involves the ideology of like less government and anti-statist type policy. It's weird too, like the France thing, right? Because it's like if only we would have been a monarchy for hundreds of years. So now we understood. You know, it's like weird that has benefited the French, or even like, you know, I don't think in many European countries the level of patriotism is anywhere near what we got.
That's true. It's weird though, because the Make America Great Again people who are critical of America, they're never critical of the flag though. As a matter of fact, they hold up the flag. And they hold up America because they have this idea of America that they think is great. They just think that we are now not America. You know, like we're not as America now as we were before. And so that's the idea. Whereas someone like Kaepernick, so they're going backwards. They're nostalgic. They're retroactive. They're, you know, kind of engaged in a sort of retrograde movement. Whereas Kaepernick, his idea is progressive, right? His idea is progressive. He's kind of doing that Fanon. We are not yet human, you know? So let's look forward. And that's terrifying for anyone who's conservative.
Well, I mean, it's like America as symbolic and empty construct versus America as a geographical and socio-political place in which people live, you know? And like for Kaepernick, it's we live in this place, there's some good shit, there's some bad shit, let's try to fix the bad shit. And for him, that's patriotic. For others, of course, anything but absolute adherence to the symbolic structure of, you know, the America is heretical.
Exactly. Yeah, that's another thing, man. I'm so glad you said that. I actually think, and I mentioned this in one of my interactions with somebody, I can't remember, but I said something. I said, I actually think Kaepernick's reaction, or his protest, that is patriotic. Because conservatives oftentimes, they like to claim that they have a monopoly over what patriotism means. And it means nostalgia towards conservative American moral principles, the idea of defending the militaristic imperialist actions of the nation state that goes around the world and polices everybody else. That's what patriotism is. But they ignore workers' rights. They ignore the peace movements. They ignore all these other things that are patriotic as fuck, because they don't fit in with their conservative logic or their conservative narrative. And I think that's, I don't know, well, first of all, it's extremely inconsistent, but more than that, I think it's really grotesque.
Who was that psychologist or the group of psychologists who talk about the six the six moral foundations, whatever it is, and that they made this claim that liberals and conservatives tend to differ on which of these moral foundations are preeminent. And so like you had liberals tend to prefer fairness over loyalty, whereas conservatives are the opposite, and they favor loyalty over fairness, all else being equal. And that kind of, I don't know how accurate that is in like psychology and stuff, but that seems to be what seems to work here, right? Where loyalty is more important as a moral end than fairness and justice. And I think all three of us would be on the opposite side of that, where justice is more important than loyalty, and you can sort of throw loyalty away when it would be unjust to do so. And that just doesn't compute to us that anybody would think that way.
Yeah, it's so strange. I almost want to say, and I don't know if I believe this entirely, but I feel this way, at least right now, that I don't really hold anything sacred, and so that would kind of fit into the idea of loyalty, right? There are certain things, obviously, I'm loyal to family and I'm loyal to friends and things like that, but I think that I'm not sure where that derives from. I'd have to really kind of examine myself and think through it a little bit further. But I do know that the idea of loyalty to a flag or loyalty to a power structure that's so big as a nation state, for some reason to me that type of sacred prostration just doesn't really vibe with me. And I have an immediate reaction against it because it just seems, I don't know, it seems like it's trying to... It seems like a religious expression, I guess, and maybe I just automatically have a gut reaction to that. But I don't know.
I mean, I think you're right, though. I think there is something super theological in a sadly contemporary sense about absolute allegiance to America, the way that, one would have absolute allegiance to God, rather than sort of, you guys will know this better than me. Is it, who's the one that wrestled with God? Is that Abraham?
Jacob.
Jacob, good old Jacob. But yeah, I mean, like you think about...
Yeah, and he got fucked up. His leg got broken.
His leg got fucked up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He tore that ACL.
You don't fuck with God, man.
Jacob is like the Derrick Rose of the Old Testament. There you go.
Well, who the Knicks then?
Oh,
Canaan,
God,
the Knicks.
know. Yeah,
Canaanites.
So bad. Wait, like but it's just weird that there's no in how sort of theological and religious the commitment to the nation state is. There's no room for like a wrestling with principles and a wrestling with the foundations and wrestling what's going on in our country. And it also makes me think of, I'll probably misquote this. Sorry to everyone who listens. I'll be gone next week. But, like the Thomas Jefferson quote, he says something like, every few generations, the tree of liberty needs to be watered by the blood of revolution or something like that. So it just reminds me that a lot of these motherfuckers are so obsessed with the founding fathers and the principles of this country. But even someone like Jefferson, who, side note, he owned slaves, that sucks. But, was a guy that got that you couldn't just have some blind allegiance to a flag or a concept, that things had to be shaken up and there had to be an internal sense of criticism and unrest sometimes for the sake of, liberty and justice.
Yeah, he literally wanted armed insurrection like every 17 or 20 years or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but he wrote a letter and he literally wanted armed insurrection to overthrow the government every couple decades.
Yeah, he was wild.
I guess just because TJ wanted to go back to France again and hook up with his French mistresses every, 10, 20 years.
Yeah, he really got into that France life.
Yeah, so did Thomas Paine. So did Thomas Paine, right?
And Ben Franklin.
Oh, did Franklin? Was Franklin a little badass?
Yeah, when I got the flu really bad this year, I watched the HBO miniseries John Adams, and I learned all about this, assuming that it's all real.
Is that the one with Paul Giamatti in it?
Yep.
Oh, hell yes.
Is it good?
It's really good. I do like it now that we've gone from, questions about the foundations of hip-hop history to Paul Giamatti and John Adams.
Yeah, well, for some reason I feel like there's a through line in there, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is.
I
have no idea what it is, but I'm sure
I like the way you guys do things.
Well, then how about we just wrap up this segment? Any final thoughts, Troy?
Put me on the spot. Final thoughts about what are we even talking about? I'm not sure.
I don't know.
We've done what? Hip-hop, Dunham, Kaepernick, America.
Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, I guess if I'm trying to grab that through line, is it that hip-hop has a long history of, by representing one's community with your voice and with creation, like art, then that itself even by itself, without actually trying to do anything else, challenges the status quo, because only certain people are supposed to be allowed to do that in a general cultural landscape, like Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan, can be subversive, and that's okay because, you know, they're famous white people. But if anybody else who doesn't have that cultural cachet tries to do that, even if they do it extremely well, like Kendrick is literally the most important artist in America, I would think probably, that's still going to be challenging and questioned. And Kendrick might as well be, you know, a saint as far as, you know, personal integrity and everything else. And yet still, it's a huge challenge to the status quo. And that's kind of an important thing to recognize, I think, in sort of the contemporary scene. Who were these people who were challenging the status quo, and look at how they inspire everybody else to do so.
Damn, yeah, you really brought that all together.
Yeah, Michael, do you have anything you want to sum up with, or do you kind of want to leave it on that note?
No, I agree with Troy, and I think he just shows how there's something fundamental and fundamentally political about hip-hop that's being embodied in what's going on with someone like Kaepernick right now, and there's a really interesting and important through line there, so, yeah.
For our next segment of the episode, we are going to throw it to Troy. This segment is called Sticky Leaves. Basically, it's what gives meaning in a world that is absurd and meaningless. T-Roy, the floor is yours.
All right, so I hope you guys are sitting down. I can actually see you, so I assume you are sitting down. This is going to be complicated as fuck, so just work with me here. So I think you guys will both appreciate this, having studied philosophy. There was a figure in the ancient philosophical tradition named Pseudo-Dionysus.
Good Neoplatonist.
Yes, yeah, Neoplatonist philosopher.
Oh yeah, well, so Michael and I went to Nottingham, and I don't remember, for our master's degrees, and they were all about some Pseudo-Dionysus. Did you study a little of him when you were there?
I did not, but people would talk about him.
Yes.
All right, so for those who are unfamiliar, Pseudo-Dionysus was a Neoplatonic Christian philosopher, and so you have these two strains of thinking in the ancient world. This is after, you know, Christianity has control of the Roman Empire and all this. And so Neoplatonism was sort of this pagan philosophy, and you had multiple gods, and you had emanations of God that sort of bridged the gods to humanity. And there was all this really weird stuff that we would associate with, you know, neo-paganism. And then you had the Christian Orthodox stuff. Hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you have some idea what that's about. Now, Pseudo-Dionysus kind of bridged those two, and he was kind of both, right? He was representing both camps. Now, the reason they call him Pseudo-Dionysus is because he wasn't like a real person named Dionysus. The actual texts we have from this figure, we think were written in the 6th century, 6th or 7th century, but they're claimed to have been written in the 1st century by a guy named Dionysus, who's in the Bible and was converted by St. Paul when he was in Athens in Acts 17. So some straight up biblical history right there. Mm-hmm. This is not really controversial. This guy was writing like he was a 1st century guy, but he's actually a 6th century guy. That's actually kind of a common thing, especially in the Bible, right? I mean, the guy writes like he's Moses. It's not Moses. It's probably like Ezra or somebody, right? Writing the first 5 books of the Old Testament. The Gospels, whatever, Daniel. They're not written by those figures who bear their names, but somebody else who's saying with authority of a cultural figure, this is the truth or whatever, right?
It's kind of like in the movie Princess Bride, you know, the name the Dread Pirate Roberts. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then people take that name. Yeah, I think Silk Road actually used that same thing too. But yeah, so it's like the Dread Pirate Roberts thing. Yeah, so go ahead.
Yes. So the key is it's not fraudulent. This is just a common trope people used in the ancient world, right? Now, I read this article that said we got this whole thing wrong. There's actually a huge conspiracy going on behind this figure, Pseudo-Dionysus. Here's the claim. The claim, this is from the Journal for Late and Antique Religion and Culture, which I'd never heard of, obviously, until I heard about this. I saw this on Reddit, by the way. Reddit, the subreddit on paganism, I think it was.
Jesus, okay.
Which I don't subscribe to. I heard about it from somewhere else. And so their claim was that in the ancient world in the 6th century, Neoplatonists who were in Athens at, you know, Plato's old academy, and their leader was Proclus, and he's this real famous Neoplatonist philosopher, and he hated Christianity. He thought Christianity was destroying Greek culture and Plato's legacy, and all this stuff that he thought that they represented. And the Christians hated him too. He even wrote a book, I think, called Against Christianity. So not a fan, right? Now, Pseudo-Dionysus, through this textual study, I guess literally copied a bunch of Proclus's words, like sentence by sentence, took out the word gods and put Trinity or God or Father, took out emanations and put like angels, like the way a first-year student would plagiarize a paper and then submit it to Blackboard or whatever, right? Like just replacing words and putting synonyms in there, hoping you wouldn't notice, kind of a thing. So a literal forgery in this sense. But the reason that this was done is that this was actually Proclus's students combining all of his works, putting it into a Christian guise, in the words of Pseudo-Dionysus, because they thought that the Christian empire was going to kill them all, basically, and burn all their works, and that they would lose all of their history and heritage. And so they smuggled it in this Christian guise so that it would last beyond the rule of Christianity over the Roman Empire and over Greece at the time. And that later on, because the Neoplatonists believe in cyclical history, not the linear history of Christianity where, Jesus comes and then eventually you have the end times and then it's all over. Neoplatonists thought that there was a cycle to history and it would be good and bad and good and bad and good and bad, and you just keep going that way. And that eventually Neoplatonic philosophy would rule the world again in the way it did, post-Plato, and that if they smuggled the work in this Christian guise, those later Neoplatonic philosophers would find it, understand what was happening, and then excise the Christian stuff and have the pure philosophy again. And this article does the textual analysis to try and show that this is what was happening, and that it's actually a huge conspiracy.
So this is like
from the 6th century.
This is like pseudo Dionysus.
Yeah, it's literally Pseudo-Dionysus, but in the sense that they weren't even trying to be Christian. They were trying to smuggle it, like you would take, cocaine and put it inside of like shoes or something, and then send the shoes from Colombia to America, right? Mm-hmm. But they're smuggling it through Christianity as ideas.
That's crazy.
And it was so crazy. And so I was thinking, one of my favorite books ever is Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose. Have you guys read that?
I have not.
I never read it.
Austin, did you read that?
No, I think,
All right,
they assigned it. I remember you guys read it when you were an undergrad and you guys were all raving about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super, white, geeky theology student thing. But it's about this conspiracy around, in, the 12th century, some monk has found a very famous ancient philosophical work that we've lost from, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but it's from one of those famous philosophers in antiquity. And there's a huge conspiracy around trying to hide it and stuff, and it's really it's a historical thriller, but obviously fictional. And I'm like, we need to have this like a HBO gritty 6-season drama about Neoplatonic philosophers taking all their works as they're being persecuted by Orthodox Christian bishops. Like Athanasius is sending his gangs around to kill all the Arians, right? And force them to get baptized, which actually happened.
This is like
straight up, like Neoplatonic philosophers were kidnapped and baptized against their will, so they would lose their authority because they were now Christians.
Jeez, really? That's fucked.
Yeah, straight up happened.
This is like some Dan Brown, Angels and Demons kind of shit.
Yeah, dude, but we need to have like a gritty drama, not like some stupid there's a secret Templar conspiracy or whatever. Like, that's all. I hate that stuff. I want a straight up HBO drama about gangs forcing baptism on people.
Yeah, so it's like starring...
And then being like
Luther.
Like, fuck you guys, we're going to create the greatest Christian philosopher, and he's going to destroy you. Because Aquinas quotes Pseudo-Dionysus more than anybody else other than Aristotle.
Dude, that's
so they kind of won.
Yeah, kind of. Well, that does make me appreciate life a little bit. That's interesting as shit.
No one's going to care about this but me, I feel like.
No, I care about it. I'm kind of curious.
That's a crazy story.
They're going to care about it when it's streaming on Netflix, motherfuckers.
I kind of love that they were just like, you know what? 1,000 years from now, this will matter.
Yeah.
And so they just like set years and years to producing this entire corpus of literature.
I respect that confidence. I don't know. I need some of that.
Yeah,
That's
damn,
great.
man. I can't even write 500 words in a day, let alone produce an entire thing that you're expecting no one to care about for 1,000 years.
You mean when you guys write journal articles and stuff like that, that's not how you view your lineage?
Hey, we've talked a lot before about maybe like hooking up with an evangelical college so we can smuggle our subversive philosophical ideas into Christianity.
It's not going to be subversive if you start advertising it over a fucking podcast.
There's a long history of this stuff, dude.
Kind of just blew up the spot right there, man.
Well, that's
one
all right.
listens to this.
That's all right. We're not.
Oh, that's a good point. You guys, I heard no one listens to this, so it's fine. You can say whatever.
Well, and it's better because I'm not really Austin or Troy. I'm pseudo Austin, and this is pseudo Troy. So really, these are just monikers because there's a bunch of people behind us that are actually influencing our ideas. So that's fine. We're good.
Yeah, we built up Facebook profiles and Instagram profiles.
God, I didn't know I was being catfished on this podcast right now. This sucks.
First-class legroom, free cocktails for everyone, and a schedule you can depend on.
Well, normally we do bullshitting, but we kind of already did our bullshitting in the main segment. So I think that it was incorporated into the main segment with the Lena Dunham, Odell Beckham thing. We bullshitted about that. So, yeah, I say we just go on to throwing it over to Michael for This Week in Hip Hop. What do you say, Troy?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, what's up? It's Michael Burns with This Week in Hip Hop. Apologies for those of you that are already fed up that you're getting so much of me on this week's podcast. But props to you that are excited that you get to hear me for most of this. Because I'm on the main podcast this week, I will keep this segment as concise as possible. So one big release in my mind this week, and that's the Isaiah Rashad's album, The Sun's Tirade, on TDE Records. Very simply put, this record is fucking fantastic. I think a lot of us are familiar with his work via singles that have come out, via some of his features, but this is his first record that comes out on TDE, and it's really good. Really kind of smooth and laid back production. At certain points, you can hear that kind of experimental influence of the LA beat scene coming through. Lyrically, very much on point. You could maybe say that in the TDE universe, he might be the second most gifted lyricist behind Kendrick, obviously. And Kendrick does show up on this record with a really good verse. So you get your Kendrick fix there. But The Sun's Tirade, Isaiah Rashad, listen to it. I'm not going to say that it's the best album of the summer, but I want to say that it's in contention. And I definitely think, considering this record and the Schoolboy record from earlier in the summer, we can officially say that TDE won the summer in terms of rap. Which is funny because I'm sure some of you saw this. There's all these corny billboards around Los Angeles and other places now being put up by OVO and Good Music. There's a really stupid one that says like Calabasas is the new Abu Dhabi because that's where Kanye and Drake live. But maybe if OVO and Good Music just put out good records, they would get more done. But what do I know? I will say that TDE won this summer, no contest. And if for any reason you still haven't listened to the Schoolboy record, punch yourself in the face and then go get it. Another thing I want to talk about this week, as we're continuing to get to know each other every week on this podcast, I want to tell you who my personal favorite rapper is. Now, I'm not going to say this is my all-time favorite rapper, but my person who is putting out music right now that I personally love, and that is Homeboy Sandman, out of Queens. Someone that, for whatever reason, I think still gets slept on and has remained under the radar. His most recent album is Kindness for Weakness. He also put out a project with A$AP Rock this year. I just think he's one of the most lyrically interesting and skilled people out there. He says in a lot of interviews, and this is true, that nobody else raps like him. Incredible live performer. If you get a chance, check it out. And he, every project, the guy is rapping differently, and he's continuing to develop as a lyricist in a really interesting way. So if you haven't listened to Homeboy Sandman before, do it. Another thing I want to tell you about, and this will be the last thing this week, I want to tell you who I like on Twitter in terms of rap and hip-hop content. Now, there's a lot of people out there, and a lot of it is garbage. I'm going to tell you the 4 human beings on Twitter that I go to for rap and hip-hop knowledge. So first, Andrew Barber of Fake Shore Drive. His account is at Fake Shore Drive. He runs the website Fake Shore Drive. If you don't know that, it's kind of the premier Chicago and Midwest hip-hop blog. But if you're looking for what is going on in the Midwest, Andrew Barber holds you down at Fake Shore Drive. Check it out. Dude was tweeting about, Save Money and Chance and all these people years ago when they were high school students. So follow Fake Shore Drive. Another account out in LA, we got Jeff Weiss, who runs the blog Passion of the Weiss. His Twitter account is at passion_Weiss. Really smart and really funny take on rap music. Often Passion of the Weiss and Jeff Weiss gets a little more, mainstream radio rap that I'm personally into, but they always have a really good take on that. And they kind of have a very Catholic take on hip hop, meaning that everything is represented. There's good writing on the website, but just the Twitter account at passion_Weiss is solid. Next, Dart Adams. If you do not follow Dart Adams, I don't think you like rap that much. But his Twitter account is at Dart_Adams. Boston-based guy. Basically an encyclopedia of hip-hop history. You can check out his recent piece on the Get Down that I thought was really good. But just someone to look to kind of be not cranky, but a guy that tells it like it is, and is very committed to the history of hip-hop. The last person I'll say, and this is maybe my favorite account on Twitter, is The Cosby. So at The Cosby, username, no relation. This is a DC-based man who I want to say is like rap Twitter's resident philosopher, or like the Socrates of hip-hop Twitter. His music tastes are impeccable. His commentary on life in general is often hilarious, often insightful, and a guy that is very politically on point as well. So if you need some more Twitter rap knowledge in your life, Fake Shore Drive, Passion of the Weiss, Dart Adams, The Cosby, and of course, if you want something at a much lower level, at Michael O. Burns. That's where I live on Twitter. That's all for this week. Catch back with you guys soon. Hopefully everyone has a good Labor Day. Yeah, see you then. Bye.
Cruising the sky as smoothly as a bird, you scarcely realize you are...
All right, thanks, Mike, for that. You heard that new Isaiah Rashad stuff, Austin?
I did, yeah. I've heard it. It's pretty legit. You?
Yeah, I just looked at that song Free Lunch, and can I say that I'm into it? Because I'm into it.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, I listened to the whole album, actually, at the gym today, and it helped me get my pump on for sure.
A lot of bangers on that one.
Oh, yeah, dude. Yeah, it's a good one, man. It's good. It's smooth, but it's also got some kind of pump-up songs as well, so I dig it.
Do you alternate between, like, sexy smooth and pump-up stuff when you're working out?
Usually I listen to punk rock. So usually it's like...
Really?
Yeah, usually like SoCal skate punk. Like Pennywise, No
Oh,
Effects.
it's like 90s stuff.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but like some of their new stuff too. So like Pennywise, they released.
Where
an
every
album
single song's at the exact same tempo, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's my workout mix. And then every once in a while, a hip hop song comes on. So, yeah. But yeah, no, I did. I listened to it. I checked it out. And then Homeboy Sandman, Michael actually turned me on to Homeboy Sandman like a few years ago. And he constantly on his Twitter, he just sends out mad love to that guy all the time. So I was like, who is this fucking guy? So I listened to him and I was like, oh, he's legit, dude. I really like him. I really like him a lot. Have you heard him much?
Yeah, I'm a big fan too. Yeah, absolutely.
Sick. Yeah. Well, thanks. And I'm going to start following some of those dudes on Twitter because, I'm trying to expand my musical horizons a little bit. And since we just determined that hip-hop is a form of social protest early throughout the podcast, then I'm going to start to even educate myself a little bit more. And so I'm going to follow some of those dudes that he mentioned.
Turning theory into praxis.
Damn straight. And for you out there, check out those recommendations. Honestly, I check out the recommendations that Michael puts forth every single week. And I really dig it. So I hope you guys are too. I hope you're liking it. Send him, hit him up on Twitter, actually. And if you have any requests or anyone that he should check out, or just to tell him what you think about the picks. And then also for us as well. You can reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram. Our handle is owls_at_Dawn. Or you can email us. You can hit us up on our website. And we'd really appreciate it if you would take just 2 minutes out of your time. If you enjoy the podcast, go to iTunes, drop us a little review, and leave a 5-star rating. It really actually helps us. It puts us higher up so more people can find it, and then we can continue to do this. Thank you, guys.
Das Vidania, Amerikanski.